I think the process itself has changed a little bit, and it's based on going from discovering high volume keywords to the most relevant ones.
This is the E-commerce Braintrust, a podcast about building momentum online for established consumer brands. Join our hosts and their expert guests for high-level conversations about e-commerce strategies, trends, and innovations. Access our Braintrust and boost your brand's e-commerce potential.
Hey, Carrie. In today's episode, we get to listen in on a conversation that you had recently with one of our PPC managers, Stefan Jordev. Stefan has been on the podcast a couple other times talking about PPC. Yeah, he is a true friend of the podcast with all his repeat appearances. Today's topic, you guys dig into the timely topic of backend keywords, the weight that they carry, and kind of take a look at an experiment that Stefan did recently to dig into how much weight they carry.
Yeah, exactly. And the whole reason why we wanted to talk about this topic is that for brands selling on Amazon, they've taken the time and effort and money to get their brand on Amazon, to get their products listed, to have inventory available. And so you're on Amazon, you're ready to sell, but you need your products actually to be indexed for the search terms that are relevant to that product. So people can find them, so that when someone searches for some attributes related to your product, that it actually shows up. And so what Amazon does with their search algorithm, because it's basically a search engine like Google, is they've kept it pretty private and in some case ambiguous what actually matters and what doesn't. So a lot of the times sellers and brands are left guessing as to what's actually important. And one of the potential areas that was thought to be important was the metadata in the back end of the product listing, where it says, when you're building a product listing, keywords. And so this is what we refer to as the back-end keywords or the keyword string or whatnot. And so Stefan, over time, I guess, sort of thought of challenging this assumption that back-end was really important because of a lot of changes that Amazon made in quick succession around what the character limit was for those back-end keyword strings and in what categories. And then eventually they just said, no, we're only going to index 250 characters. So it got him thinking about, well, how important is this? And he ran a experiment to figure it out.
Yeah, it was interesting listening to his journey that led him to running the experiment. And this topic is one that I know on the team we've had a good amount of discussion around, is just how much weight, how much emphasis do we put on the back end keywords? Yep. And Stefan definitely shed some light on one view of that, I think.
Exactly. Yeah, well, let's get into it and we'll come back and wrap things up at the end.
Sounds good.
So I'm here with Stefan Jordev, who is a PPC manager at Bobsled Marketing. And we've had Stefan on the show a couple of times back when we first started the Ecommerce Braintrust podcast. And Stefan was talking a lot about PPC at that point. And today we're talking about something that's very closely related, which is back-end keywords. But before we get into that, Stefan, for anyone who didn't listen to your earlier episodes about PPC, give us a little bit of background on yourself and what you do at Bobsled.
Hi, Kiri. Yeah, it's good to be back on the podcast. I'm Stefan, and I've been working as a PPC specialist and a PPC manager for Bobsled Marketing for about a year and a half now. Prior to joining Bobsled, I was working with Google AdWords for a few years, so I am very interested in the development of the PPC world. I am working with Seller Central and AMS clients with Bobsled, trying to help them grow their sales by optimizing their PPC campaigns. I would like to talk about the backend and some theories we have here at Bobsled regarding them in 2008.
Yeah, and so in the Google world and in Amazon, keywords are really important for search and discovery. So keywords are really important on Amazon for discovery because the way that consumers use Amazon is actually to go on to the platform and search for something. People don't generally shop on Amazon by clicking on a category, drilling down into the category and finding the product that they want. They typically go to Amazon and they're looking for something. They're looking for, with direct intent, or looking, searching with a problem to solve, like smelly feet or something like that, and looking, problem-based searching. So we know that keywords are important, but something that we've done for a long time was use keyword strings in the back end of the product listing, in the metadata, if you will. But recently you started questioning whether that was really effective, Stefan. So tell us a little bit about what was the general consensus or theory a while ago around back-end keyword strings, and what has sort of changed in your mind?
I think you've touched on the topic a little bit, and before diving in, I just want to probably cover the theory which made me question the importance of backend strings for Amazon. We always like to make distinctions between Google and Amazon, and if we go to the very core of it, Google is a search engine and Amazon is an online shopping platform, I would say. So while you would be tempted to manipulate and improve your search ranking on Amazon by adding additional keywords, the ultimate value of your listing will be based on the pricing, optimization of the title, and the description you have, your listing as a whole, rather than just the back-end string of it. And with Google dominating and expanding in the search sphere, we saw that keywords included in the backend, which was the meta tag keywords included on pages we've been using a while back, they've been decreasing in value because it's a subjective matter. You are the one who input the keywords there, and how you see your product might not necessarily be how your customers see the product. This is probably the trigger that made me think that maybe Amazon will follow that path. Up about 6 months ago, I believe, we sort of got the confirmation about this as Amazon decreased the limit of characters it's going to index from their backend strings.
Right. And so because Amazon's A9 ranking algorithm is Amazon's secretive about a lot of things, and their ranking algorithm is one of those things, we have never been categorically told by Amazon what kind of weighting keywords have from the back end: title, bullet points, description, and even user-generated content like reviews and questions, right? There hasn't been any specific directive from Amazon about the title is really important, and then second most important is the back end keyword string, and third most important is bullets. And yes, we definitely index keywords from customer reviews, or no, we don't. There's just so much speculation going on about what actually counts and what doesn't.
Absolutely. We have not given a strict priority list, like you said. We don't know what's more important than the other. But based on experience and based on some experiments we have been running here, I would put the backend strings towards the low priority batch of the things you would like to optimize. There are so many more things that you want to be looking at first before you go to your backend strings. You want to have visually appealing listing as an overall. You want to have some great looking images on your listing. You want the messaging, the title and description to be very straight to the point, to illustrate the product you're selling in a good light. And ultimately, you want to have a good product. When people purchase it, they want to be satisfied with the product they've obtained, possibly leave you a positive review, and tell their friend.
So those are all things that help with conversion. And I'm going to call you out on something, because as a paid search guy, there is definitely a lot to be said about driving traffic to product listings using paid search. And with that, you're able to very specifically point out what keywords you want to be driving traffic for. But what about, to answer the question of, okay, my listings look really good, they're conversion oriented, they have great images and copy that explains what the product is and the benefits, and they talk about the brand, and and all that. But what about getting the customer to the product listing to begin with? And obviously paid search is part of that, but what about actually indexing a product in organic search rankings for a particular keyword?
Amazon seems to think that 250 characters are enough for you to clearly describe your listing in the backend, drive some relevant traffic to it. And I have to say, I agree with the decrease of the character limit.
Why is that?
If you would like to clearly illustrate what your product is and what your product is about, you can do it with the 250 characters. If I'm selling gaming mouse, I'm looking at the mouse in front of me. If I'm selling a gaming mouse, I would like to be optimizing keywords for gaming mouse, not trying to figure out 100 additional ways to describe this, including
that is irrelevant. Yeah.
Like best, top selling, include all the possible colors you can think of, even though you're selling only three variation of colors.
Right.
In the end, it's going to come down to it. Even if you manage to cheat the system for a little bit and get ahead at least for a few weeks, if the traffic is not relevant, it's not going to convert them. While measuring, I was just going to say, we can measure the wrong metrics, but in the end, if we don't see the sales we have defined for this month or quarter or year, we have failed in some way.
Right. And so that's a pretty strong statement. And so to back up your hypothesis, you actually ran an experiment on a few different product listings to actually see what is definitively, could we find a direct link between backend keywords and product rank or indexing. So what was the experiment you designed and what did you find?
Basically, we have some product listings which are around 250 characters. We did include one which was over 250 characters to see how that would be indexed, going beyond the 250 characters allowed by Amazon. And we tried to cover wide list of clients from different categories to see if there's any correlation between the category you're operating in and the keywords being indexed. And I have to say, for the most part, if you go up to the 250 characters, you do get a larger percentage of keywords being indexed if they're relevant to your product. For many clients that were between 250, 300, 200 characters, all relevant keywords, of course, when we would run the tool that is supposed to check the indexing per a particular keyword, we would see very high percentage of keywords being indexed. We would see something like 95%. Some of them would have 100% of their backend keywords indexed, which is a great thing to see. But if you go higher than 250 characters, as I mentioned, that particular client we were testing with, we did see that indexing percentage decrease. And this goes in line with everything that Amazon has been saying. I think even more, they sound a bit scary that you can get your characters de-indexed going beyond 250 characters. We have not seen a rule like that being enforced so far, but my point would be, why test it? I'm sure we can we can find a way to describe our most unique, most valuable value propositions within 200 characters.
Yeah, especially if you know that it doesn't actually help your indexing anyway to include more characters. Yeah. And so just to clarify, with those words that you included in the back end, were they also keywords that you include that were already included in the product listing front end, like the title, bullets, and description, or were they unique to the back end?
For the most part, I try to match what we have in the backend to the title and description of the product. I do not consider this to be a repetition. I consider this to be consistent. If you're selling a product, if you're selling a notebook, for example, another thing I just saw on my desk, you would definitely specify that this is a notebook in your title, in your description, and in the backend keywords. I mean, it's an important term. It's your main selling keyword, and it's going to be included in all the fields that we have just covered. As I said, it's a matter of being consistent with your wording and with your value proposition, not necessarily repeating the word, but including it everywhere Amazon allows you to.
Got it. And so just to elaborate a little bit more on the findings and what has changed about your hypothesis going forward about how we should really treat the back-end keyword strings, what's your recommended strategy now for clients with looking at the keyword strings in the back end?
Basically, I don't think I got the chance to mention this. We did see some discrepancies, some listings, including characters that go beyond 250 for a little bit, but this is not necessarily impacted by the backend strings only. It can also be impacted by the listing as a whole, the title, descriptions, even keywords based from the reviews your customers use to review your product. But in general, my main advice would be to play by the rules enforced back in August 2017, I believe it was. This is where the major change was revealed, and a lot of people were talking about it back then. And it's still the same rule, and it's still applicable now. Basically, my strategy would be the backend keywords would be probably among the last things you do when you optimize your listing. Experiment with keywords, find the best ones that go into your title, find the best converting ones, the higher volume ones that go into your description, and then you can use those keywords and those whole sentences included there to pull the main ones and include them in the backend. I think this would illustrate your product clearly to Amazon's. And when Amazon has a pretty good idea about what you're selling, you're in a very good position to sell more.
Right. And so how does that change, if at all, the approach to completing the back-end keyword string as a means to get your auto campaign started with sponsored products? Because with sponsored product auto campaigns, Amazon is really pulling out keywords from the product listing and back-end to create automatic campaigns based on the keywords that it finds themselves. So does this change or discovery change the approach there with auto campaigns?
I think the process itself has changed a little bit, and it's based on discovering high volume keywords, going from discovering high volume keywords to the most relevant ones. And in the end, if we're connecting the backend string to the auto campaigns you have running, especially for a new product, I think it will only benefit the new sellers in the long run. You will get some new keywords discovered by running the reports you have from your auto campaigns, but those are going to be based on the relevant keywords you have included in your backend, which you already know are relevant to your listing. As a result from this, you will have an optimized backend, which will impact your organic ranking. You will have an auto campaign running, specify the parameters, the backend keywords for which, among which you want the campaign to be running. And as that campaign ages and runs for a number of weeks or months, you will be getting some new customer search queries to be added as keywords, but they will be closely related and relevant to your listing, and they will be impacted by the backend strings you have included there. Of course, this is not a process that ends or you can optimize and be done with it. This will be an ongoing process, especially moving months, quarters, years into the future. But having the basic 250 characters which are relevant to your listing will ultimately help you with your organic rank and with your sponsored product campaigns running.
Right. And that's a process that we use at Bobsled Marketing with our PPC clients and full channel management clients, is that keyword harvesting strategy, where there's on an ongoing basis, we're able to see what keywords Amazon has identified through their auto campaigns. We're actually feeding that back into the front end of the listing and the back end of the listing to consolidate that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Indexing, right? Great. Well, thank you for explaining all this to the audience. It's definitely an area that I was really interested to dig into as well. And is there anything else that you want to add about the experiment that you ran, or other things that are still sort of unclear that we should proceed with caution?
I think we have covered most of the results we had from the experiment, with the risk of being too harsh on the backend string. I would just reiterate on what my main point was. Focus on optimizing your listing more and obsess with the backend strings a little bit less. And I think the results will surprise many of you.
That's a great tagline for this episode. Thank you for doing that hard work for me. Great. Thanks, Stefan. Great to talk to you again. And thanks for putting this experiment together. We'll share more insights on the show notes at ecommercebraintrust.com, where you can find a little bit more information on the experiment that Stefan ran, and also about that tool that you use, the index checking tool. What is that called?
It's actually Google Chrome plugin, and it's called Keyword Index Checker.
Straightforward. Yeah. They've done a good job of naming their product to optimize for keywords themselves.
Thank you.
All right, great, Stefan.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
So, Julie, after listening to the interview, was there anything new that popped out at you from Stefan's experiment?
One of the things that popped out is definitely the basis of the experiment, because as of a couple years ago, when we were optimizing listings, and there was definitely the stance of take full advantage of the back end. If there's 500 characters allowed, you take full advantage of that. And what Stefan's telling us is the front end is where it's at, that's where you put your time and energy and optimization. And then you ensure that the back end has only 250 characters that are highly, highly relevant to your product. So it's a shift in perspective from what we had a couple years ago when it came to optimizing listings on Amazon.
Yeah, and I think that the takeaway for me was also there's so many things that you have to do when you're selling your brand on Amazon, from a launch, optimization, brand protection, marketing, SEO, advertising standpoint. You need to think about all the things that there is to do, and you need to start prioritizing how you spend your time. And so I think one of the takeaways from Stefan is when you're looking at SEO activities, prioritize on building a really good front end listing that includes keywords in a natural way, not in a keyword stuffing way, but in a natural way that people are actually going to be searching for products that are related to yours, and focus on making that experience really good for the customer, rather than figuring out keywords to stuff into the back end.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The optimization, it's not even just with the keywords, it's with optimizing the images and really taking the time, like you said, to have a fully optimized front end. So it's a good experience for the customer. And if you have the highly relevant keywords on the page, then you're driving the organic traffic to the page.
Exactly.
As well.
Yeah. And the other thing that stood out to me is that I would have assumed, just based on logic, that while Amazon might say they only index 250 characters, maybe there's just no point to doing any more than that. Because it is possible. It's not like when you're putting keywords into the back end, that you get a hard stop, that you get a message saying you can't put any more characters in. You're able to keep putting characters in, but I would have thought there would just be a point of diminishing returns, that there's no additional benefit to including more keywords. But what Stefan found in his experiment was that there was a negative effect from having too many characters in there. So it's almost like Amazon trying to suppress individuals or brands trying to get more than they should.
Yeah, it's kind of a passive aggressive approach.
Amazon, really?
Yeah. Instead of just cutting it at 250 to just, penalize for those that go past it. It's an interesting approach.
Yeah, and I really like to also hear the validation around we don't want to do anything to mess with our auto campaigns with PPC, because those are really, really helpful for us to figure out what people are searching for and what search terms convert and stuff like that. So it was good to hear that this, being really scrupulous with your back-end keywords isn't going to negatively impact your auto ad campaigns.
Yeah, ultimately, it seems that the shift is just forcing sellers to list their products with highly relevant terms. And instead of tangentially related, relevance continues to be underscored with this move.
It really smacks of pretty much every update that Google has made to their search algorithm. And I never played in this area before, but I know that there was a time when people who were building websites were trying to pad out their headings and domains and stuff like that with the keywords that they wanted to rank for, with the idea of kind of gaming the system and telling Google, hey, we're the most authoritative site for these collection of keywords. And over time, Google just kept rolling out update after update that penalized that behavior that was blatantly trying to use the search algorithm. And it's just, the idea is over time, it's just going to favor results and web pages that an actual person is going to get value out of. So there was a time and a place for these kind of SEO tactics that were all about keyword stuffing and lots of different tactics over time. But where we've ended up now, and we'll continue to end up with as search engines like Google and Amazon become more sophisticated, is that they only care about results that are genuinely helpful to a human being looking at those results, not a algorithm.
Yeah. And as a user, that I would appreciate that instead of putting in a search and then you get something that's not even at all related, it's you think you spelled something wrong. So I think anytime that the search results can be completely relevant to what the search is, then it's just all around a better experience for the customer.
Exactly right. It's a very frustrating experience when something irrelevant pops up just because someone's done a good job of ranking for that keyword, but it turns out it's not relevant and it's really annoying. So you're only shooting yourself in the foot by getting irrelevant traffic to your listing. It's going to make your conversion rate bad and get people annoyed and unlikely to buy your product anyway. And Amazon, because of the nature of the marketplace, there's a literally unlimited number of sellers that can be on the marketplace offering an unlimited number of products. So it's not like there's a constraint on the number of listings that there can be. There's only they have to build in some kind of quality constraint in terms of who gets to be on page 1 in those first 10 search results and who gets to be on page 2. So the smarter Amazon needs to get more ruthless with who shows up because there's just more products to deal with in index. And their priority right from the very beginning is to be Earth's most customer-centric company. So they're always putting the user experience at the core of everything that they do, not the goals of the individual merchant or brand who wants to get more sales.
Yeah. And I think this is another example of that the user experience is what is improved here.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Any other things you wanted to highlight from the interview?
No, I think the word of the day is relevance. So I think I walk away with an eye on ensuring high levels of relevance in all aspects of your listing on Amazon. That's what you need.
Just to distill it down into a core idea, but hopefully the experiment
not to put everything else to the wayside, but relevance, it makes it clearer and clearer.
Right. Thanks for helping me wrap this interview up, Julie.
Yeah, thanks to you and Stefan. It was very interesting. And it, like I said, kind of a hot topic on the team recently. So it was interesting to listen to what Stefan found in his experiment.
And dear listener, if you enjoyed the interview as well, I would love it if you went onto your Apple Podcast app or Stitcher or wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a review and a rating, because that helps people to find the podcast and give it a listen and subscribe. And that helps us to keep producing these shows. So it doesn't take very long to do, and it gives us some good feedback and incentive to keep producing these podcasts. Thanks, everyone, and I'll catch you next week.
Bye.